When war correspondent Ernie Pyle met Major General Terry Allen in North Africa, he wrote something that would have destroyed most military careers. He called him Terrible Terry. Not terrible in the sense of bad, terrible in the sense of terrifying to the enemy, impossible to control, and absolutely beloved by the men he led into combat. This is the story of a man who failed out of West Point twice, got fired from his dream command in the middle of a war, and still became one of the most successful combat generals in American history. This is the story of Terry de la Mesa Allen, the general who proved that leadership isn't about following the rules. It's about winning battles and bringing your men home alive. Terry de la Mesa Allen was born on April 1st, 1888, at Fort Douglas, Utah. April Fool's Day. Some would say the date was fitting for a man who spent his entire career breaking rules and confounding his superiors. His father was Colonel Samuel Allen, a West Point graduate and career Army officer. His maternal grandfather was Colonel Carlos Alvarez de la Mesa, a Spanish officer who fought for the Union at Gettysburg. Military service wasn't just a family tradition, it was the family business, passed down through generations like an heirloom. Terry grew up on army posts across the American West. He learned to ride horses before most kids learned to ride bicycles. He spent his childhood around soldiers, absorbing their language, their habits, their way of thinking. By age 10, according to his mother's later recollections, he could ride as well as any cavalry trooper. He also learned to smoke, chew tobacco, cuss, and fight. Skills that West Point would not appreciate. In 1904, at age 16, Terry received an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. It was expected. His father had graduated from West Point. His path was clear. 4 years of study, a commission as a second lieutenant, a career leading soldiers. It didn't work out that way. Terry Allen was a terrible student. He hated the classroom. He hated the rigid discipline. He hated the endless rules about uniforms and deportment and behavior. He wanted to be a soldier, not a student. He wanted to ride horses and lead men, not sit in classrooms studying mathematics and engineering. In 1907, he failed out, discharged for academic deficiency. Most young men would have been devastated. Most families would have been humiliated. But Terry Allen wasn't most young men. He reapplied to West Point. His father used his connections to get him another appointment. In 1912, Terry failed out again. This time, permanently. Dismissed for failing ordnance and gunnery courses in his senior year. He was 24 years old with no degree, no commission, and no prospects. He should have been finished. Instead, he went to Catholic University in Washington, D.C., earned a Bachelor of Arts degree, and got his commission through the university's Reserve Officer Training Corps program. On November the 30th, 1912, Terry Allen became a second lieutenant in the United States Army. Not through West Point, through the back door. And he would spend the rest of his career proving that the Academy's standards didn't measure what actually mattered in war. When World War I erupted in Europe, Allen was a young officer serving along the Mexican border under General John J. Pershing. In 1917, when America entered the war, Allen deployed to France with the 91st Division. He was given command of the 3rd Battalion of the 358th Infantry Regiment. He was 29 years old, a major, leading 1,000 men into the most brutal war the world had ever seen. and he was fearless. Allen didn't lead from a command post in the rear. He led from the front, personally leading patrols into no man's land, the deadly ground between the trenches where men went to die. His soldiers watched their battalion commander crawling through mud and barbed wire, facing German machine guns and artillery, and they followed him because he never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. He was wounded twice, once by shrapnel, once by poison gas that would affect his health for the rest of his life. He earned the Silver Star for gallantry in action, and he learned something that would define his command style forever. Soldiers will follow an officer who leads from the front. They'll die for an officer who cares about them more than he cares about regulations. After the war, Allen returned to a peacetime army that had no use for aggressive, rule-breaking officers. He was assigned to various cavalry posts. He married Mary Frances Robinson in 1928. They had a son, Terry Allen Jr., in 1929. Allen's career seemed stuck. He was passed over for promotion multiple times. His efficiency reports noted his lack of West Point credentials and his tendency to bend rules. But they also noted something else. His soldiers loved him. And when he commanded troops in field exercises, he won. In 1940, everything changed. Germany had conquered Poland and France. Britain was fighting for survival. War was coming to America. Everyone knew it, and the army needed combat leaders, not peacetime bureaucrats. General George C. Marshall, the new Army Chief of Staff, looked at the list of colonels eligible for promotion to general. He saw hundreds of men with perfect records, West Point degrees, and no combat experience. Then he saw a handful of officers who had actually fought. Men like George Patton, Dwight Eisenhower, and Terry Allen. On October 1st, 1940, Marshall promoted Allen to Brigadier General, jumping him ahead of nearly 1,000 more senior colonels. The message was clear. War was coming, and Marshall wanted generals who knew how to fight. When America entered World War II after Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Allen was made Assistant Division Commander of the 36th Infantry Division, but that was just a stepping stone. In June 1942, Allen was promoted to Major General and given command of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, America's oldest and most storied division. The Big Red One was deploying to North Africa as part of Operation Torch, America's first major offensive against Nazi Germany. Allen would lead them into combat. Everything he had learned in World War I, everything he believed about leadership and warfare, would be tested in the deserts of Tunisia. On November 8, 1942, the 1st Infantry Division landed at Oran, Algeria. The landings were successful, but the real fighting lay ahead. German forces under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel were retreating westward from Egypt. The Allies planned to trap them between British forces advancing from the east and American forces advancing from the west. The Americans were green, untested. They had weapons and training, but they'd never faced veteran German troops in actual combat. The learning curve would be steep and bloody. In February 1943, the Germans struck first. At Kasserine Pass, German forces, including Tiger tanks, smashed through American positions. It was a disaster. American units broke and ran. Over 6,000 casualties. It was America's first major defeat of the war. General Eisenhower fired the corps commander and brought in George Patton to restore order and discipline. But Eisenhower had scattered the 1st Infantry Division's units across a 100-mile front, assigning battalions to other formations, keeping them away from the main fighting. Terry Allen was furious. His division had trained together, fought together, and now it was being broken up and used as spare parts for other commands. He did something that no smart general would do. He bypassed his chain of command and went straight to Eisenhower. He demanded, "Is this a private war, or can anybody get in it?" It was insubordinate. It was borderline disrespectful. It was also effective. Eisenhower reunited the 1st Division under Allen's command and sent them into the fight. In March 1943, Allen's division captured the town of Gafsa and pushed east toward El Guetar. On March 21st, Allen sent aggressive reconnaissance patrols forward, led by Lieutenant Colonel William Darby's 1st Ranger Battalion. They seized key terrain southeast of El Guetar, setting the stage for the battle that would redeem American arms after Kasserine. On March 23rd, the Germans counterattacked with the 10th Panzer Division. Dozens of tanks supported by infantry. They intended to smash through American lines and recapture Gafsa. They ran straight into Terry Allen's carefully laid trap. Allen had positioned his infantry on high ground with clear fields of fire. He had his artillery pre-registered on likely German approach routes. He had tank destroyers from the 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion positioned to cover his flanks. And when the Germans attacked, Allen's men were ready. The Germans lost 37 tanks that day. The 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion was credited with 30 of them, 200 German infantry casualties. The Afrika Korps had thrown its best punch, and the Americans hadn't broken. They'd held, they'd fought, they'd won. After El Guetar, the 1st Infantry Division fought through Beja and Matur, helping secure Tunisia by May 1943. In a letter to General Marshall, Eisenhower wrote, "Terry Allen seems to be doing a satisfactory job." High praise from Eisenhower, who didn't give compliments easily, but not everyone was impressed. General Omar Bradley, now commanding 2nd Corps, watched Allen's division with growing concern. The Big Red One was cocky, undisciplined. When the Tunisian campaign ended and the division went to Oran for rest, Allen's men celebrated by getting drunk and tearing up the town. They looted wine shops. They brawled with rear echelon troops. They acted like they owned North Africa. Bradley wrote in his memoir that while the Allies were parading decorously through Tunis, Allen's brawling 1st Infantry Division was celebrating the Tunisian victory in a manner all its own. In towns from Tunisia all the way to Arzew, the division had left a trail of looted wine shops and outraged mayors. To Bradley, this was unacceptable. To Allen, it was understandable. His men had been through hell. They'd fought and bled and watched their friends die. If they wanted to blow off steam, fine. He'd deal with the complaints later. His job was winning battles, not impressing rear echelon bureaucrats. The philosophical divide between Allen and Bradley would only grow wider. In July 1943, the 1st Infantry Division participated in the invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky. They landed at Gela on July 10th. Immediately, German forces counterattacked, trying to push the Americans back into the sea before they could establish a beachhead. It was a desperate fight. German tanks broke through American lines and advanced toward the beaches. Some units fell back in confusion, but Terry Allen, standing at his command post with artillery shells falling nearby, reportedly said, "Hell, we haven't begun to fight. Our artillery hasn't been overrun yet." His men heard the story, whether it was exactly accurate or not, and they responded. The counterattack was beaten back. The beachhead held. But the toughest fight was still ahead. The town of Troina, a mountain stronghold defended by veteran German troops. Allen's division attacked and was thrown back with heavy casualties. Some companies lost over half their men. They attacked again and again. Finally, after days of brutal fighting, Troina fell. The 1st Infantry Division had fought magnificently. They'd held at Gela. They'd taken Troina after a battle that ground up entire battalions. By any measure, they were one of the finest combat divisions in the American Army. And then, on August 7th, 1943, Terry Allen was fired. Bradley relieved both Allen and his assistant division commander, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt, Jr., the son of President Theodore Roosevelt. The official reason was that the division needed fresh leadership after months of continuous combat. The real reason was more complicated. Bradley believed Allen's division was undisciplined. He believed Allen's casual approach to military regulations was making the entire division insubordinate. He believed fresh commanders, with proper respect for military order, were needed. 2 days after Allen was relieved, his face appeared on the cover of Time magazine. The August 9th, 1943, cover story extolled Allen's virtues and the 1st Division's accomplishments. The timing was cruel. Allen was a national hero at the exact moment his career seemed finished. For most generals, relief from command meant the end. You went home to the States, took a desk job, and spent the rest of the war far from combat. Your reputation was ruined, your career was over. But Terry Allen wasn't most generals. Eisenhower wrote to Allen weeks later, "I am certain that after you have had your well-deserved rest from the battlefield, your experience and courage will command your assignment to equally, if not more important, duty." Eisenhower's personal papers contain an even more explicit statement. It is a terrible injustice to General Allen to hint that he was relieved for inefficiency. The answer to this one is that I will be glad to have General Allen again as a division commander. Recent scholarship suggests that Allen's relief was actually planned before Sicily began, part of a plan to rotate exhausted commanders out of combat, not a punishment for poor performance. Patton had praised Allen's performance in both Tunisia and Sicily, but Bradley's complaints about discipline provided convenient cover. Whatever the real reason, Allen went home. He spent 3 months in the United States, wondering if his combat career was over. On October the 15th, 1943, less than 3 months after being relieved in Sicily, Terry Allen was given command of the 104th Infantry Division, the Timberwolves. A brand new division, still training, with no combat experience. Allen was told to get them ready for combat in Europe. He threw himself into training with the same energy he'd brought to combat. He pushed the Timberwolves hard. He personally led field exercises, showing his junior officers how to lead from the front. He was demanding, profane, and utterly focused on preparing his division for the reality of combat. But he also learned from his experience with the 1st Division. He issued orders that he would not tolerate unshaven or slovenly troops. No more wild indiscipline. His men would fight like tigers, but they would also look like professional soldiers. He could change. He could adapt. He just needed a second chance. In October 1944, the 104th Infantry Division entered combat in Holland, capturing the towns of Achtmal and Zundert. Then came the Battle of the Bulge, Germany's last desperate offensive in December 1944. The Timber Wolves were thrown into the fight, helping contain the German breakthrough. After the Bulge, Allen's division punched through the Siegfried Line, Germany's defensive fortifications along the border. They crossed the Inde River and entered Cologne, one of Germany's largest cities. The division fought with such skill and aggression that they earned a reputation as one of the finest assault divisions in the European theater. In March 1945, General Bradley, the same man who had relieved Allen in Sicily, visited Cologne to inspect the 104th Division. He told Allen, "Terry, I'm pleasantly surprised to see these young timber wolves of yours already ranked along with the 1st and the 9th as the finest assault divisions in the ETO." Allen's response was perfect. "Brad, the 1st and the 9th are in damned fast company. No bitterness, no resentment, just quiet pride in what his division had accomplished." The 104th Infantry Division continued its drive across Germany, spearheading the First Army's advance. They covered 350 miles in a relentless push toward the heart of the Third Reich. Other divisions fought hard, but the Timber Wolves led the way. On April the 26th, 1945, elements of the 104th Infantry Division reached the Mulde River near Torgau, Germany. They made contact with Soviet forces advancing from the east. Terry Allen's Timber Wolves became the first American unit to link up with the Red Army, an event that symbolized the practical end of the war in Europe. Germany surrendered less than 2 weeks later. Terry Allen had commanded 2 divisions in World War II. Both became among the most effective combat divisions in the American Army. He had been fired from one and vindicated by the other. He had proven that the rules didn't matter as much as the results. After the war, Allen retired on August 31st, 1946, at the rank of Major General. He moved to El Paso, Texas, and worked as an insurance salesman. He was active in civic affairs and veteran organizations. He lived quietly, far from the spotlight. In October 1967, tragedy struck. Lieutenant Colonel Terry de la Mesa Allen, Jr., following in his father's footsteps, was killed in Vietnam while commanding the 2nd Battalion, 28th Infantry Regiment, a unit of the 1st Infantry Division, the same division his father had commanded in World War II. Terry Allen Sr. was devastated. His health deteriorated rapidly. He suffered a series of small strokes that he described as going in and out of reality. His heart weakened. On September the 12th, 1969, Terry de la Mesa Allen died of natural causes in El Paso. He was 81 years old. He was buried at Fort Bliss National Cemetery next to his son and his wife. Today, the United States Military Academy, the institution that had expelled him twice, presents the General Terry de la Mesa Allen Award to the cadet with the highest rating in military science. The irony would have amused him. Terry Allen was decorated with the Distinguished Service Medal twice, the Silver Star, the Legion of Merit, 2 Purple Hearts, and numerous other American and foreign decorations. The British made him an honorary companion of the Order of the Bath. The French awarded him the Legion of Honor and the Croix de Guerre. The Soviets gave him the Order of Suvorov, one of their highest military honors. But his greatest legacy isn't the medals. It's the soldiers he led and brought home alive. War correspondent Ernie Pyle, who was killed in action in 1945, wrote about Allen. Major General Terry Allen was one of my favorite people. Partly because he didn't give a damn for hell or high water, partly because he was more colorful than most, and partly because he was the only general outside the Air Forces I could call by his first name. If there was one thing in the world Allen lived and breathed for, it was to fight. He had been all shot up in the last war, and he seemed not the least averse to getting shot up again. This was no intellectual war with him. That was Terry Allen, a man who loved his soldiers, hated bureaucracy, broke rules when they got in the way of winning, and proved that leadership isn't about following regulations. It's about accomplishing the mission and taking care of your men. He failed out of West Point twice. He was fired from his dream command in the middle of a war. By every conventional measure, his career should have been a disaster. Instead, he became one of the most successful combat generals of World War II. He led 2 divisions into some of the toughest fighting of the war. Both divisions became legendary. Both achieved victories that helped win the war. Because Terry Allen understood something that many of his superiors didn't. War isn't won by following the book. War is won by leaders who know when to ignore the book, who care more about their soldiers than their own careers, who lead from the front and never ask their men to do something they wouldn't do themselves. Terrible Terry Allen. The general who failed twice and won wars. The general who proved that the rules are just guidelines and results are what matter. The general who showed that sometimes the best leaders are the ones who don't fit the mold.